Martin from the client success team in Roivenue, and I'm joined by Emil Jimenez, the Roivenue CMO.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. And together we are going to look at some learnings we have been able to gather about Black Friday from our years of work with our current clients, and also share it with you, and also propose some steps to move forward from there. So first of all, we're going to share with you how we looked at the data of our clients, and what was the journey of discovery, and we have been able to discover some pretty interesting patterns. And then for these patterns, we actually have created a custom analysis, which then we will present to you, and also show you a way how you can use it yourself, because it will be later shared with you through our Roivenue website. And then coming from this analysis, there are a couple of ways you can you keep going, and we'll talk about those and maybe try to give you a little bit of inspiration for the years to come. And at the end, we'll be how guys. We'll have a short or even long, depends on you, Q&A session. So feel free to use the chat box to type in your messages, even throughout the webinar, and we'll get to your questions in the end. So if there's one thing you will leave in, or you'll keep in your mind after today, after this webinar, it could be this slide, right? So here, after our discovery process, we actually have been able to find an interesting thing, that some of the marketers use Black Friday heavily as a channel to acquire new customers, right? And there are like two ways to go about Black Friday. One of them is to really try to retain your margin and retain your profit. But the other one is really looking at customer acquisition, and then customer acquisition doesn't end by the first order, but you should be looking past the first order and really see what does the new customer bring in profit as time goes, right? So as we got here, there was a bit of a discovery process. So the great benefit we have with the guys working in client success in Roivenue is that we have a lot of data at our hand from our customers, for whom we integrate data from all the different sources. This could be the marketing platforms, where we get the data about their campaigns and about the costs and clicks and impressions that they have in those platforms. Then we also integrate with web analytics, and we see what these campaigns bring in terms of website visits and conversions. But that's something special we do, is that we integrate also past the web analytics, and we look at what is the real outside of the online world outcome of these orders, right? So what is actually delivered, what is the profit realized on these orders, and which clients have been making these purchases. And this really enabled us to look deeper into what's really happening on the market during the Black Friday. So we've been having the discussions about Black Friday for a while with our clients, mostly the ones who are operating in the consumer markets, and it is a big deal, right? Everybody is getting ready for Black Friday months before. They are preparing their target audiences. They're already thinking about how to tackle this busy weekend, and we really wanted to debunk what's happening under the hood, and see how our different clients are going about this exciting part of the year. So we took it to Roivenue, and we have done a little research on what's really happening on their side, right? So I will switch there myself now to see our app. So now we are in Roivenue, the application, and this is, we are looking at the Roivenue demo, which is filled in with the demo data, but this demo data is on a real use case of a real client, right? So for those of you who do not have access to the demo, get in touch with us. We are very happy to share with you and walk through the works of it. And so what we're doing is very easily we could go through. First, we want to take a look at the investments, right? So there's something like general knowledge about the investment, and the investment is way higher in the period compared to the weeks before, and even more to the yearly average. And this was really the case for all of our clients who are selling consumer products. The Black Friday week investment was way above the yearly average. It was above, and if compared to the weeks prior to it, in some cases it was all the way 3 to 4 times higher than the weeks before. And consider also that the weeks before that were above the yearly average, right? So the investment increase was ever present. And to find it out in Roivenue, it's very simple. Just select the investment part of the funnel. So that was there. Then, as we do here in Roivenue, we always try to look what is the outcome of the investment, right? So you put money in, but what comes out? So first, we looked at ROI, or the marketing ROI, meaning what revenue is coming out of this investment. And throughout our clients, we saw that the revenue or the marketing ROI has been either stable or actually had a slight increase, right? So the revenue coming out of the investment was always either stable or going up. So no big finding here, but the interesting or the core of our case today came from looking at margin, right? Which is again enabled by the fact that we integrate with the internal systems, with the CRM data, and from this we have found two ways in which the customers have been moving, right? And this refers back to the initial slide we had, and that is these two ways have been. The difference was that in some cases the margin stayed stable, relatively stable, when comparing the Black Friday week to the weeks before Black Friday. And then in other cases, very interestingly, there was a sharp decrease when comparing the Black Friday week with the week before, right? And in some cases, even this sharp decrease was of, let's say, 10, even up to 10 percentage points compared to the week before. So if you're considering consumer markets, 10 percentage points in margin, that's a huge drop, right? And so then you might be thinking, okay, so in the first case, we are keeping our profit, we are increasing the budgets, but the profit are still there during the campaign. So the return on the investment is coming already during the campaign. But in other case, we are willing to give up a significant portion of our profit in return of supreme acquisition of new customers. We are expecting to gain as much new customers as possible. And we found this very interesting, and we started to dig deeper into this and started to think about how to measure it, right, or how to really evaluate it, because it's one thing if you are able to bring in a lot of customers during Black Friday, that's a good first step, but it's not the end game, right? If somebody comes in for the first time but they never return, that's not a good sign. Even more if you think that they made their first purchase for a significant discount, right? So that doesn't really bring in profit into your company. What is better, or the real success or the real win of this strategy is that these people who were acquired during the Black Friday come back in the month's time, or keep returning as much as possible, make subsequent orders, and these orders are then for higher profit, right? There might be some smaller discount in play, but discount will be not as huge as it was during the Black Friday, and then you will compensate for the lacking profit during Black Friday in the months to come, right? So, and around this, since we are again able to look into this, since we have the data at hand, we put together a quick analysis in Power BI. It was using before we go into that, a little bit of the logic, which we have been trying to explore, is that if you think about the customer acquisition, the real or the very important factor to your success in acquiring new customers is your current saturation of the market, right? So here we see on the slide that in the core, you can imagine that's your existing customers. People who already made a purchase with your store, are well affiliated with your brand, know about you. And then the outer circle represents your core audience, right? So these are both people who already made the purchase, but also people whose interests and needs are in line with what you are selling, with your value proposition, and there's a very simple connection to what you're selling, right? So I always refer back to sports examples because that's what I'm interested in the most. So if you imagine that you have a store and you're selling basketball shoes, right? Your core audience, which means on our slide, the outer circle, are people who either play basketball or they are in love with the game or are in any way affiliated with the game, right? So these their interests and their needs are directly aligned with what you sell and what you propose. And our analysis was then focusing on realizing the growth potential, right? The logic we have followed is that if the people who you are acquiring are, you see that it's meaningful to them what you offer, and that they return and they make more orders, that it means that you still have some room to grow. If on the other hand, you acquire people who never come back or very rarely come back, it might be a strong signal that you acquired the people who have made the first order made it because they have been attracted by a very interesting discount, but never came back. So it might be a very strong signal that you are filling up your core audience, right? You are at the edge. Your customer base has been able to grow to an extent that you have filled up the core audience, right? And around this logic, we have built the analysis in Power BI. It was using the data proposed by the Roivenue API. And in this analysis, again, we can take a look into it. It will be available on the website. You can try it yourself. So if you already have a Roivenue account, it will be very easy to plug in. You just need to go to your account and connect the connection string from the export section. If and you do not have a Roivenue account yet, I think it's okay. Feel free to get in touch with us, and we are happy to tell you about the steps you need to take to replicate this yourself, what data you need, and what is the work behind that. Okay, so we wanted to mostly look at the people who have been acquired during the Black Friday campaign. So we looked at their first order, when the first order of a customer has been placed, right? So in this one group of who have placed their first order during the Black Friday campaign, you see those as here on the bottom, people who have been campaign acquired. Those are people who have placed their first order during the specified period of the Black Friday campaign. Then campaign retargeted, that's another subgroup of the campaign created users. These are the people who have placed their first order during Black Friday, but from a remarketing campaign or retargeting campaign. This means that these are people who have been existing audiences of your store, but they have not placed an order yet. And then the third group, this is the largest group in terms of number of users or customers, is the group of customers who have placed their first order outside of the Black Friday campaign, right? So these served as some kind of a benchmark or average, a base towards which we have been comparing the other groups, right? And we took an approach which was quite simple. There are a couple of other ways to get a couple of other opportunities that you will be able to explore in this analysis yourself. But for our purposes, we just simply looked at their customer value and the first 360 days since their first order. All right, so that this is simply profit per user in a group, which they have been able to generate in the first 360 days. Then we looked at cost per user, so we summed up costs per order for all of the orders of users. And then the main KPI here was the comparison, right? The return, the CV divided by the cost, right? And the ROI, if the ROI was bigger for the campaign acquired users, in light of our logic, of our analysis, this would mean that there is still some room to grow, right? You are acquiring customers which are valuable for you. If, on the other hand, so there could be two possible outcomes of this analysis. Either the ROI of the users you are acquiring is higher than the base. This means that you can basically keep repeating what you did this year in the coming years, and do not be afraid of increasing the budgets, right? Just put your hand on the throttle and keep going. You still have room to grow. Or on the other hand, if you realize that the acquired customers have lower ROI, average customer ROI, than your base, then there might be a way for you to think a little bit about changing your approach. And this could lead to two outcomes. Again, one could be that you would switch to the profit maximization approach, when you would try to retain your profit already during the Black Friday campaign, as was mentioned earlier, the first approach. Or on the other hand, you could stick with the customer acquisition approach, but you would advise to look into trying to explore new areas in terms of customers and try to look past your core audience, right? And that is something Emil will get a bit deeper into it here. Right? So,
hey guys. So I'm going to talk about segmentation and how to expand that and extend your core audience. So typical segmentation, as we know, is you look for the overlapping interests, like overlapping interests, demographics, behavior. And so your sweet spot is always that middle area. And it comes a point in time where you will saturate that, and you need to start just looking for new and different ways to extend your audience. So one way is to overlap just 2 or 3 of these segmentations and find interesting ways to use them. So I'll give you an example. A good example is a recent campaign, or not so recent, it happened in 2016, by Spotify. Now, if you can imagine, Spotify has tons and tons of money, but if you look at it from a brand perspective, they're the kind of brand that goes into a market and very quickly saturates their market. You'll get adoption extremely fast because they have that huge brand recognition. And then what do? So this is an actual case study. And what happened was that they were pretty much saturated in a market like New York City. Their media team said, hey, you know what? We bought 10 billboards. And the creative team in-house was like, okay, what do we do with this? We've never done out of home. We always do digital and this and that and the other. So they started looking for interesting ways of using these billboards to increase engagement and attract new customers. So what they did is that they used the data to make it extremely hyper-local and extremely relevant to their user base, therefore also increasing their user base and increasing their people. So I'm going to show you a video. Can you switch the video?
Yeah. Can you just go here?
How do you wrap up a year like 2016?
Look at it again.
In a year that felt like it was all about our differences, Spotify tuned in to the listening data of its over 100 million users to remind us we're all a little bit weird. We started with an out-of-home campaign that was at once global and highly localized, showing what people listened to during Brexit, Valentine's Day, night out, and in inappropriate ways. We told 164 unique data stories in the exact neighborhoods where the listeners lived. We spread the message online, showing that it wasn't just our listening habits that were weird, it was the music too. On social, we took a weirdly scientific approach to the year's top hits, like how many dances Drake needed, the year in weird spelling, and the original roller coaster that was Bieber's hair. Next, we personalized the campaign to each user with an email recapping their year in listening, with stats on who they loved, when they loved it, and a unique playlist with their favorite songs of the year. Then, we partnered with top artists to reward the fans who listened more than anyone else. like trapping paper for the biggest streamers of trap music, Sienta hats for Sia fans, and for the biggest corn fans, cornaments. All the gifts were announced through a series of social films. Our year-end campaign received over 1,500 pieces of news coverage, generated 1.2 billion earned impressions, and over 1 billion streams. And during its run, Spotify's subscription growth easily broke all company records. Thanks, 2016. It's been...
Cool. So as you can see, guys, that was a very interesting campaign that started as 10 billboards and ended up going all over a full 360 digital campaign. So as you can imagine, I know we don't have Spotify money, so let's talk about what you can do. So if you look at their campaign was based on behavior and interest. So, behavior and location. So to the guy who played Justin Bieber's song "Sorry" 3,000 times on Valentine's Day in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, right? That's a very, very unique target. But then obviously it targets all the hipsters in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and it has extensions on there. So one thing that you can do yourselves is what I call like using popular culture or news events to create interesting combinations with your products. So for example, we did this simple layout where we would target Game of Thrones and your demographic or your behavioral, your core audience of sneakerheads or basketball fans. And this is something that you would really never connect together, right? Jordans and Game of Thrones, like these two things don't match. But when you put into the context of your demographic, when you put into the context of what kind of, let's say, trendiness is happening or how the size of the audience of Game of Thrones fans, you come up with an interesting extension to your core audience. And the key is to have an interesting visual to match that, because otherwise it won't make sense, right? So here's an example of Black Friday half off prices. You can call it slashing prices. You can do whatever you want. And then you can target it to literally the interests of Game of Thrones and your core audience. So with that in mind, I want to challenge you guys, and we call it the Black Friday Challenge for Roivenue. I want you to send us your creatives, and the winner is going to win a trophy. This is the first year we're going to run this. So if you can be the first Black Friday Challenge winner, we're going to congratulate you and send you a trophy to your office. So please just send your creatives to hello@roivenue.com. It's not a performance thing. It's a creative thing. So the only rule is it's got to be funny, it's got to be cool, and it's got to have actually run. So actually, no scam ads. It has to be on. You have to use it. If you have some numbers behind it, that'd be great to send it as well, guys. We'd be happy to see the performance. And with that in mind, this is kind of how it wraps up, right? You have your current customer base, and then with these new audiences, you can start tapping into and extending that circle a bit more and try to help with different areas. And this is a trial and error thing, guys. This is really what you need to do is hypothesize, test, and see what works. You might find a nice golden well in there for you to dig deeper into and start thinking of different ways to attract these audiences. And on that note,
yeah, so that's a place to get creative, right? You can really think out of the box and try to explore.
You can take 100 shots and maybe 10 of them will be on the spot, but it might be your gold mines,
Yeah.
So you can turn that into a little bit of fun. And really, the logic here is on the last slide, right? Just imagine that let's say your core audience is 100K people, and you'll be able to explore 4 new more which are relevant to you, which are of size, let's say 10 or 15K people, which is very interesting. And you can build on that in the future and keep learning more and more and more and adjust really what you're offering to the market depending on what the market is really looking for, right?
So yeah, so we already have a question here from
Milan. Yeah, Milan. This one was a pretty early one. You're asking about whether it's a quality tool enough KPI if you just look at new customers, and that's actually what we are trying to do, and going a bit further, right, and look at the customer value they bring in with their subsequent orders. Right? It's not just how many customers we been able to get in the boat, but what they actually did, what's their after work with that, and how they are interacting. So we're just not looking at it as a number, but we are trying to look at it qualitatively, right? Not each customer is the same. We are trying to evaluate the campaign by the customer value it really brings in. So it's a big step forward, or the next step from the traditional evaluating on like what it brings in at the moment. We try to look in the subsequences or the subsequent events of the acquisition, right?
I'll be Chris. So
Yeah.
Chris Bro writes, I want to start analyzing my customer's value. Can you give a tip on how to start?
Yeah, first, it's very important to have data at hand, right? So what the customers, where they come from, what's the source of them, right? So you know actually how you got them to be your customers, what actually made it happen, and then continuing on that, it's good to track all the actions that the customer has been doing within the market. So really looking at what kind of orders are being placed and what was the sequence of these orders in terms of time. What's the time separating these orders, and trying to look at what is brought in terms of profit, right? So just really calculating what these customers bring in as the time goes. So really start by trying to integrate your data, looking at the source of the customer, and then looking past that in your data from the CRM. Right? That's a tip I could give you, and that's actually what are we doing in Roivenue. And then very important thing is to segment these customers when you've done with your initial analysis, so you know which groups of the customers are more valuable, which are doing perfectly according to what you want them to do, and which are doing as good, and have some learnings from that, right? So what was different for the group which is of high value when compared to the group which is of lower value, right? And how can you navigate your new customers on their journey from becoming a newcomer as your customer towards some kind of this high value group, right? Cool. Any more questions, guys? We're here for you. You have all the time. Yeah. So feel free to be typing in your questions. This whole webinar, I believe, will be available for you on our website. Also with the analysis we have provided. There will be some tutorial on how to use it yourself, how to integrate it, how to set it up, and also how to work with it. There are some extensions within the analysis which we have not been showing in this webinar, but they also might be interesting for you to look at how because we haven't looked at the specific campaigns within the platforms and how they are able to bring in customers, but that's also available in the analysis in Power BI, so you can look forward to that.
And guys, remember, send us your creatives. I want to give somebody a nice trophy. Send it to your office. It's going to be cool.
Is it first year?
I guess the first year of many.
Yeah.
So who's going to win Black Friday? That's the question that I asked to you guys. All right. So thanks for stopping by, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Thank
Ciao.
you. Ciao.